right, that was so good. That was great. How's everybody doing today? Oh, good. Doing okay, I guess. Not super enthusiastic. If we never met before, my name's Adam, pastor here at Highway, and so glad that you are here to worship with us. And it's a special Sunday, what we call a Storyteller Sunday. So not a normal sermon, but instead we're going to hear some stories from our congregation. And the thinking behind this is we want to be a storytelling church. And the reason we want to be a storytelling church is because Jesus was a storytelling God. We've been talking about this in our latest sermon series, but Jesus told around 35 to 40 distinct parables, these small stories that help teach people these principles. And apparently Jesus was a pretty smart person because some latest research has come up with this phrase called neural coupling, okay? And this is actually what happens to our brains when we listen to someone tell a story. It's a different neural pattern than when we just hear facts and we hear statements. But when we listen to someone's story, we actually start to line up our patterns with their patterns. Our neural patterns start to mirror the storyteller. This level of empathy starts taking place. It's just this beautiful concept. But as we've been talking about in our series, Plot Twist, one of the problems with modern day stories is so often we think they should end nice and tidy, that they should follow a script. But that's just not always the case. There was this piece of writing, this storytelling, that's one of the most acclaimed, prestigious storytelling in America culture. It was called Saved by the Bell. And I would get home after junior high and I'd watch Saved by the Bell episodes, and Zach Morris, the protagonist, and his friends, they would start the episode, some kind of hijinks, something bad would happen. But the beauty of a 25-minute story is it would all be resolved in 25 minutes. And so often that's what we think when we think of stories and movies, that they follow the script and then our lives should go like those kind of stories. And that's just not how life works. So that's why we've been talking about this concept of plot twists, unresolved stories, and how do we look for God when our stories don't exactly follow script? How can we listen to God when things aren't going the way we expected them to? So that's my mini sermon. I can't go Sunday without giving some kind of sermon, so thanks for doing it. So we're going to welcome up our first storyteller. It's Jinhie. Can we give it up for Jinhie, everybody?
Man, parables and neural rewiring, no pressure or anything, right? Thanks, Adam. Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but about once a year for the past several years, I seem to hit these slumps. I just start to feel really aimless, alone, like nothing really matters, like there's no hope. And last year, my reaction to this sort of feeling was to just really double down on my outdoor adventures. And I love my trips to the mountains. I mean, I think it's kind of my natural habitat in a lot of ways. I often feel way more energized and alive on my way back. There's really something about fearing for your life on the side of a mountain and like somehow pushing through anyway. It's like, I mean, it's crazy. Highly recommend. But over time, it started to feel like I was using these trips also a bit as a way to run away from something. And I wasn't really sure what. And to be honest, I was a bit afraid to stay home long enough to kind of find out. This year, as the slump has hit, I've sort of added a little bit to that approach. Kind of in addition to these mountain escapes, I've tried something a little bit lower lift as well. I've just tried also getting really angry and bitter. And then about 2 weeks ago, Adam asked if I would be willing to share a story here. I said yes, and then immediately started wondering if that was a big mistake. He was kind of asking because he knew I had shared kind of a similar story a year ago about my experience suddenly losing my mom when I was in grad school, and how that grief had been. But kind of in my anger and bitterness, I honestly just wasn't sure if I still believed in the message of that story anymore. This idea of grieving with hope. It seemed silly, even naive, to be talking about something that painful and like trying to spin it in this positive light. So like any responsible adult with the deadline of today, I obviously waited until yesterday to force myself to think back. And it was brutal. It was like a real emotional roller coaster and a half. I cried like a lot. I went through a lot of toilet paper. I made myself a mental note that next time I sign up to give one of these stories, I should buy some Kleenex first. I clenched my fists thinking about just how unfair it all was, like everything I lost when I lost my mom. And then another memory resurfaced. I remembered the frantic flight back to the East Coast after I got the call from the hospital. And when I landed, I sent a quick text to a friend in California telling her that I'd have to reschedule lunch because my mom was in the ICU in DC. When she got that text, this friend immediately bought a plane ticket and got on a plane to come and support me. She had just started a new, really stressful job at Tesla, but she came anyway. I didn't ask her to. I had no idea how much I needed it, and she came anyway. And my mom was in the ICU for 2 weeks before she passed away. This friend came both weekends. And she did so much. She organized a big message group with my friends from all my different circles so she could keep them updated and I wouldn't have to. She came to the hospital with me. She was there. And as I remembered that, I started crying again, but this time for a different reason. I was just so overcome by this intense feeling of gratitude. So thankful for the amazing love and kindness of this friend that I had no idea I needed, that I can't ever repay, and that is just forever gonna be bound up in my memory of losing my mom. And the tears just kept coming as I thought about other people who had showed up in those 2 weeks my mom was in the ICU. How a group of people from my mom's church community immediately gathered as soon as they heard and went to the hospital and promised me that they weren't gonna leave until they laid eyes on her, and just how much comfort that gave me on that agonizingly long flight back to the East Coast. How they came and picked me up from the airport and took me straight to her. All the friends and family that traveled to be there. This one night that we packed her hospital room full of her friends and family and community and my friends, and we just sang songs around her hospital bed for hours. How I was never once alone in those 2 weeks. I mean, just so much gratitude. And I mean, this is something I've thought about before. I gave this story last year, and somehow it still surprises me every time, just what a paradoxical thing that is, that when I think about this time, I mean, obviously I feel a lot of grief, but the other strongest feeling I feel is just this insane sense of gratitude. I mean, it makes no sense. And, you know, at this point I was crying, I don't know, a whitewater rapid, something, just like it was getting crazy in there. As I thought about what happened when I came back to California, I decided to go to Grief Share. My mom had gone to Grief Share after her sister passed away, so it seemed like kind of a natural first step for me. But when I got to the group and saw I was like by far the youngest person there, like all I wanted to do was get up and leave. I thought, no way am I gonna relate to any of these people here, and this feels a little bit churchy for me. And then the group leader said, it's gonna be $10 in cash for the book. And I like froze. I mean, nobody carries cash? I don't carry cash anymore. And I was like, well, there you have it. That's a sign. I came, I tried, I really gave this an honest shot. I am out of here. And I like got up to leave. And then this tall, fashionably dressed lady with red hair said, don't worry about it. I have an extra $10. I think you should stay. And I was like, damn. Well, there goes my excuse. And so I reluctantly sat back down. And after the meeting, she and her husband came over to talk to me. And I was shocked at how loved and seen they made me feel in just one conversation. And they invited me to get dinner with them before the next meeting, so I thought, I guess I'm coming back. And then we did it again before the next meeting, and the meeting after that, and the meeting after that. And we've continued having dinner together for every week, basically, for the last, 5 years. Lisa and Gonzo are truly family to me now. I call them my adopted parents. They've really been my anchors through this crazy, chaotic grief journey. They've given me this sense of stability and home that I never thought I'd have again. And I honestly don't even know how to express how thankful I am for all the ways they've loved me, how they've held me when I cry, how they've shared about their grief journeys with me and helped me through some of my hardest times. And in a particularly heroic act of love, how they even battled through the pages of instructions to build IKEA and Target furniture for me on several of the many moves that they've helped me with. And they're also the reason that I found Highway. One of my mom's biggest hopes for me was that I'd find a church community. And it's something I talked to Lisa and Gonzo a lot about. And they introduced me to Chris, who was just up here for the child dedications. And she actually invited me to Highway on her first day on staff here. And I'm so thankful she did. I met Julie and Adam at a newcomer's lunch, and they've also become huge sources of love and support in my life. Last year, when I was kind of nearing the bottom of one of my, hopelessness slumps, I came across a sermon that Adam had given on grieving with hope. And listening to it, I was thinking, man, I feel like I used to know how to do this, and I just, for the life of me now, cannot figure it out. So I hunted him down on WhatsApp out of the blue and, asked if we could chat. And talking with him in the Cupertino Dish Dash, I finally, actually let myself think and feel all the complicated emotions around that time. And I actually cried, and I don't really cry in front of people that often, so that was kind of new for me. And that was kind of the beginning of coming out of that slump. So thank you for that. And around this time last year, I realized I had made a really huge mistake at work. The kind of thing that just really stabbed at my imposter syndrome insecurities. I have quite a lot of those. And Julie sat with me in the back of the sanctuary after the service and just comforted me while I cried. This is a really special community here at Highway. I'm so thankful for all the people I've met here. I mean, you're some of the most authentic and truly inspirational people. I never thought I'd find a church community like this, and I know my mom would be really happy. Yeah, so I guess when I'm in these hopeless slumps and I'm looking for a way out, I'm looking for hope, I think I often try everything except thinking about kind of that darkest time, the loss of my mom. But it was really in that time that God has met me in so many different ways. I think it's by far the strongest reminder I have of how loved and held I really am. I wrote in a card to Lisa and Gonzo that it's an amazing thing how intertwined their love is with my memory of losing my mom, how I can't remember that time and not also remember all the amazing ways they've loved me. And I think I'm starting to realize that the reverse is also true. That I can't fully remember and appreciate and feel all these different examples of how deeply I'm loved if I don't let myself think about that hard time. And, I've given this story before and, of course, fell back into a slump. I mean, I guess these things are kind of inevitable. But I hope I keep remembering this. I hope these powerful reminders keep driving me to seek and prioritize church and spiritual community, to look for ways that I can fiercely love people around me as I've been so fiercely loved. And every once in a while to, step back in and lean into that grief instead of always running away, and hope that something beautiful can keep coming from it. So, thank you.
Hi, I'm Marlene. I too was kind of delaying thinking about sharing as well, and it felt like I was kind of scratching open an open wound again. But I'm really happy to be sharing with you today. About 13 years ago, I was sitting in a coffee shop in San Francisco with my toddler, and I was looking out the window towards Union Square, just seeing all the hustle and bustle of all the people going by, people in groups laughing, people, walking with intention to their office, maybe people carrying lots of bags of the things that they have bought. But I was really struck in that moment. I seen all this life just pass me by, how unfazed these people were by what was going on inside of me. And I was just really struck by how could this world keep spinning forward when it felt like my world had stopped. Just a few days before, my husband Carl and I had gone to my 10-week ultrasound appointment, and we discovered that there was no heartbeat. And so we were in that waiting of those few days for me to get my DNC procedure. So here I was staring out the window, looking at all this life, and swirling past me, and I felt like I was just kind of sitting in slow motion. And like life was outside the window, and death was inside of me, and it was just a very pivotal time. After my second miscarriage, 6 months later, fear really started to set in. And I read through my prayer journal from that time, and I was really reminded that of my prayers to God, like, I don't want this longing to turn into an idol. I really wanted to remember the preciousness of my son and not to take away from how amazing he was. I could already see that this plot twist, this longing for another child was really consuming me. I mean, I felt like everywhere I looked, there was a pregnant person. Even the pharmacist was pregnant. When I went to pick up, I went to go pick up my fertility medication, and like, there's another pregnant lady. Like, I just couldn't get away from it. And people would ask me, like, how many children do you have? And I'd say 1. But inside, I was just yelling, but I have 2 more. So I felt like the communion I had with God was really being severed. I felt like I was incomplete with one child. I was beginning to listen to these lies that God didn't care. I couldn't trust him, that God wouldn't redeem this loss. After my 3rd miscarriage, I felt like I was sinking into a hole. I remember Carl, my husband, was asking me, what do you want to do this fall? And all I could think of was, I want to have a baby. I was just completely consumed, and it was becoming an idol. I was trying anything I could to climb out of this hole, grasping at any sort of quick fix. And people were readily, wanting to provide a way out, trying to help me, like, go to acupuncture, take these prenatals, relax, stop thinking about it, pray this different way. I met with an adoption agency. We started to pursue IVF. And I was grasping at all these things, and they were all good things to consider, but I really was just wanting a quick fix. So I went to the acupuncture appointment, and I was thinking in my head, like, this is going to be the thing. This is going to be the thing that fixes me. And as I lay on the table and I told the acupuncturist my story, she said, well, the first thing we need to do is work on your grieving. We need to work on your grieving. And I was just fuming inside. I'm like, no, just fix me. Like, just make this go away. And as I lay there and just conceded to all the pricks, I could just feel the tears just flowing down my face and puddling into my ears. And it felt like she just opened up this release of this ache that had been stirring for so long inside of me. Another friend asked, like, well, how about you go to counseling? And I thought, well, that's going to take a long time too, and that's going to be hard. So I decided to pursue my spiritual director and just see, well, maybe she can help me pray about this in a different way. So when we met, she really entered into the pain of my story and pointed me to a passage in John 11, the story of the death of Lazarus, Mary and Martha's brother and a friend of Jesus. I was really familiar with this story, but she said, just read it over and over, sit with it, imagine yourself in the story, imagine standing at the tomb. What would Jesus say to you? What is Jesus doing in the story while you're standing there? And I remember crying out to God, asking, what was the point? What was the point of all these miscarriages? I really related to the bystanders in the story in John, the ones who watched Jesus weep and said, well, if he loved Lazarus so much, why didn't he do something to keep him from dying? And at the tomb, Jesus looked at Martha in the eye and say, didn't I tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? And at that time of loss and waiting and acupuncture and failed fertility treatments, I so wanted to see the glory of God. I wanted God to redeem my story. And I couldn't see how. All I could see was the tomb. But as I sat with that story and as I read more and read different translations, I noticed something really startling. I finally noticed for the first time that Jesus was angry. John 11:33 says, when Jesus saw Mary sobbing and the Jews with her sobbing, a deep anger welled up within him. And then he wept, and then he went back to the tomb, and his anger resurfaced again. The Greek word for anger here means to quake with rage, to roar like a lion, to bellow with anger. That word anger really alarmed me. Like, Jesus was angry at the death of Lazarus. Could he be angry about my miscarriages? What did this mean for me if Jesus was angry? Would this change things? And what I needed at that moment was Jesus' anger, to know that he was angry at my loss and that my loss wasn't small or insignificant to him. That was really a game changer. It showed me that it was okay for me to be angry. Jesus was angry at death. He was filled with rage. He was mad at the tomb. But as the author of life, he was going to turn this death into a resurrection, which is really the storyline of the gospel. Miraculously, my story didn't end at the tomb. It was a 3-year journey, and I had less than a 1% chance of getting pregnant on my own. And yet just literally days before I was about to start my IVF treatment, I found out I was pregnant. And that pregnancy turned into the gift of Katie Joy, which means pure joy. But what I want to make sure to share up here from this plot twist is that things aren't always wrapped up with a pretty bow. In fact, I kind of had a hesitation of sharing the story because I know what it's like when a plot twist doesn't end the way you want it to and you're left with unanswered questions and heartache. Like our family right now is living in a plot twist. We've been living in a plot twist for 3 years and we still don't know why or how long, and we don't know what God is up to. But in the midst of that plot twist, I can remember and reflect back. During that period of waiting for Katie, I remember my fears. I can't trust God. God doesn't love me. God doesn't care. I'm not worth it. God doesn't have a plan. God won't redeem this loss. And I remember that in the midst of any plot twists in my life, I'm invited to come. Come, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. No matter what the plot twist, all I need to do is come to Jesus. In the midst of my fear, my disappointment, my sadness, just come. In the middle of any unanswered questions, just come. In the midst of my longing and jealousy, just come. God never grows weary of what I'm carrying. He never grows weary of me coming to him. I don't always accept this invitation to come, but God graciously and patiently reminds me of this hope when I'm willing to come to him.
Thanks, Marlene and Jinhie. So powerful, so moving. I was thinking about this concept of the power of remembering our stories and to tell each other these stories in community. Now, for thousands and thousands of years, Jewish families, Jewish communities would get together and they celebrate a Seder meal. We did this last year if you were here with us, and just each piece of this meal was a part of the story. And they would tell each other the story of what God had done, how God had rescued them. And then many years later, Jesus is sitting with his disciples in a room, and they're partaking in this meal. And he says, take this bread, and now I want you, whenever you eat it, I want you to remember me. Tell my story. Remember my story. This is my body broken for you. And then he took the cup of wine, and he said, now this is my blood. I want you to tell this story of my sacrifice and my love. As long as you drink it, remember me. And so if you are new with us today, we celebrate communion every week at Highway. We say a lot that we are a Jesus-centered church, and so we revolve around Jesus. And so every week we want to remind ourselves, tell ourselves the story of his sacrificial love. And so we have tables all across the room, even in the patio. And this is an open table church. Even if you don't attend here, you are welcome to take communion with Jesus this morning. So let me pray for us, and then we can partake. Thank you so much, God, for these beautiful people that shared with us today. And we join our hearts right now, and we just want to pray a blessing on them as they both just shared courageously. The story doesn't just follow the script always. And so we want to ask that you would continue to give them the courage, as Marlene just said, to come to you in the middle of rest, or in the middle of burdens and weariness, to come to you for rest. And right now, I pray that you would help us meet with you, help our brains have some neural rewiring as we remember the kingdom that you have made, a kingdom of sacrificial love. And help us to have moments right now of just gratitude for what you've done for us. So meet with us, Jesus. Commune with us now. Amen. Amen. Let's take communion together.